my name is Alexey Nesterov. I'm a creator of this live project called Building an E-commerce Web Application with Spring Boot, which is a live project on mining.com. And before I get any further, I probably should explain what live project is and how is it different from what you used to see from mining, such as books and videos and other educational content. So a live project is actually quite a fancy idea. Is an attempt to for people learning like technology or learning a certain something basically, to let them work on an almost real project, on an almost real software project, and basically let them build an application or maybe some small piece of application following the recommended set of steps. And that's basically how it works. So in a project, in any live project, you can find them on the mining page. You can basically see a list of projects. The one I created called Building an E-commerce Web Application with Spring Boot. And that project is about, as I said, it's supposed to be like almost real software project. So I decided to kind of show you how to create a web application, specifically e-commerce web application, and we're going to talk about different features of this app in a second in Spring Boot in Java. So if you are coming from different technology, if you let's say know Node.js, Python, PHP or something, and if you want to learn a little bit of Java and modern Java development, or maybe you experienced Java developer already, but you don't know Spring Boot, maybe you know other technologies, other frameworks in Java ecosystem, and you want to learn Spring Boot, that's a project for you. So you're going to learn about fundamentals of Spring Boot, how to build a structured application, how to basically drive your application from the very beginning to the very end. And my idea was not just to show you a little aspect of this application, because you can see here on the left, you can see the content of this course. And basically here on the left, you can pretty much see all the important steps in the building the web application, right? So you see like different features. And in the end, what I think is super cool, is super important about this project is you can also see the final step, which is packaging and deploying the application. So you can start with basically with nothing, with no project whatsoever. And you're going to end up with an application running in AWS in EC2 instance available to the public internet. So if you want to use it for your CV, or if you want to use it just to, maybe experiment with it a little bit, you can totally do that. So I said that this is not just a web application, that's an e-commerce web application. And e-commerce web application is usually has a certain set of features, right? So the catalog is the obvious one. You just want to show the items you want to sell. Apparently you're going to have something like a basket or a cart basically, so you can add items and then check out. So you probably want your user to be able to register and log in with their account, or maybe using any social media like Facebook or Google or something. And most likely you're going to want to charge people for the goods you're trying to sell. So checkout is the essential part of any e-commerce web application. And in my case, I'm using PayPal to show you basically how can you integrate payments into your web app. So this is it. So basically this is in an e-commerce application in Spring Boot, and this is part of the live project, right? So in a live project, you're going to get a set of what is called milestones. And every milestone will include a definition of the story you need to be working on. So the first one is maybe not very representative. So let's take the second one, building catalog. That's the second milestone of the course. And in every milestone, you're going to get an objective. You're going to get a short intro into why is it important for the project. You're going to get, most importantly, you're going to get a user story to implement. So the user story is if you look into, let's say, start a job, a career in software engineering, this is probably how you're going to see your items in the backlog to implement. So this is how you're going to see your, basically what you need to be working on, most likely. But from user story, which is written from the perspective of a user, you're also going to see a recommended workflow. And this recommended workflow is basically what I created. So I kind of trying to guide you through the steps you need to take without too much details, without going too deeply into what exactly you need to do. So it's not a tutorial by all means. It's not something you can use like, copy and paste code and quickly throw something together and get it up and running. It's not an article. It's more almost like a real project, right? You have a story to work on, and you have a recommended flow from me, but you don't have to follow it. So the ultimate goal is to implement that user story. So if you can achieve that in a different set of steps or in a completely different order, that's absolutely fine. Just feel free to do whatever works for you. But if you don't feel comfortable with just, starting from scratch, that's probably a good step-by-step recommendations of what you need to do to actually get to the end goal. And what is also super cool about the live project, not just this particular one, building an e-commerce web application, but about any live project on Manning website, is in addition to just recommended steps, you're also gonna get access to relevant books and resources from Manning. So let's say if that's the, in my case, let's say I'm talking about different approach to software testing in this case, and you can see that there are even parts of the book called Unit Testing Principle, Practices and Patterns included into the course itself. So you don't have to buy it, it's already basically included. So you can just read it in here, embed it. You can access the book for the duration of the course as well. And let's say it's not just one book, right? In this case, I'm using multiple books. And the one that, if you're gonna start working on this project, you're gonna see that I'm using a lot of chapters from this book called Spring in Action by Craig Walls. That's an amazing book. And you can find pretty much all the information about Spring Boot development in that book. So I think the combo of this course and this book is a best way to learn Spring Boot and develop something real in Spring. Some people got confused actually. Some people asked me about that, why the domain is different. So Craig is using Taco Cloud, as he calls it. It's basically an application to show like a tacos or something. I don't even know what's there. Well, I mean, I know what tacos are, but like I don't know what the application does. So, but the thing is, if you see something related to tacos, that's probably Craig's part. And if you see something related to cakes, that's probably my part. Because the project is all about implementing a web commerce application website, basically, for a bakery in North London called Cake Factory. So this is, again, completely made up, doesn't exist. Maybe it does, actually. I never checked that. So it doesn't exist, and imagine this company is trying to build a small website to actually sell, pastries and cakes and something to the customers around, with some delivery, with accepting payments online and etc. It's fairly simple, pretty basic, but still something interesting. So that's what is liveProject. And for people who just joined, I'm going to remind that what I'm talking about is a live project called Building an E-commerce Web Application with Spring Boot, the live project I created for Manning. And what I'm going to show you today is basically how you can get started with this project and implement some of the first steps in the project, getting started and building a catalog. So I'm not just going to show you just, like going step by step, although a little bit of that as well. But I'm actually going to show you some important aspects, and I want to highlight things like using tests for writing software. Again, if you're just coming to the industry, if you never worked on a software project, you may have heard of software testing, and maybe you heard of TDD as well. For experienced people, I'm pretty sure experienced developers, they know about testing a lot, but not all of them heard about TDD. So TDD is test-driven development, and it's basically how can you create your software guided by tests, so you can use tests to actually guide your development step by step. I'm going to show you how it works. Basically, imagine I just joined this project, and I want to build this e-commerce application for a company called Cake Factory. And I'm going to get started with the very first milestone. So basically, I'm just going to go step by step as you would normally do. And my plan is in the next 45-50 minutes, just may finish milestones 1 and 2, and just to show you how it may look like. And in the end, I can just also quickly show you how the final application going to look like. and what you're going to get in the end when you complete the project. But let's start from scratch. Pretend we just joined the project and we want to do that. So I'm going to just follow the steps in here. So my objective for the first milestone is just to create an empty project in Spring Boot that serves as a static HTML page with no logic whatsoever. So again, there is a recommended workflow for pretty much every milestone. You can use that. I kind of know it already by heart, and it's already, you know, I spent so much time actually writing that and shuffling that around just to get it better laid out for you. Most likely I'm just gonna do it without any workflow, but I will try to follow pretty much the same steps. So I'm gonna start with the project. As one of the Spring developer advocates, Josh Long, called the second best place on the internet, which is called Spring Initializer. And the Spring Initializer is the website that helps you to quickly create and start developing a Spring Boot application. So Spring Boot application, let's say in my case, I'm going to be using a Gradle project with Java based on Spring Boot 2.4. I'm going to give it a name. Let's say I'm going to call it Cake Factory, which a reminder is the name of the company I'm building a website for. And I'm going to call it a demo project for mining. Cool, so I'm going to use jar packaging and Java 11. And maybe in the meanwhile, so what I'm going to need to do, I'm also going to need to add some dependencies to my empty project, right? So this, as I know for the first milestone, I need to display an HTML page. This means in Spring World that I'm going to need to create an MVC. Most likely I'm going to need to have an MVC controller. And I'm going to need to have some templating engine because I'm going to render some HTML. In my case, I'm going to use Mustache, but again, it's up to you. You can use any view technology if you want. If you prefer a thime leaf, that's totally fine. If you want to use, what else is there? Like pretty much anything you want to use, feel free to do so. But I'm going to be using Mustache, and I'm going to explain why in a second. So imagine these are only two dependencies I need, right? So I'm going to click generate, and I'm getting this project that I can get up and running quickly. Another question some people ask is about the setup, about the tools and technologies you're going to be using in this course. And I would say use whatever works for you. So I'm IntelliJ IDEA fan, so let me open it for you. So I love IntelliJ IDEA and I'm using it a lot. So I'm going to be using that for the demonstration, for the stream. But if you don't like it, if you don't have it, you can use whatever tool you're using for Java development. Visual Studio Code will work just fine. I don't know, what else is there now? Eclipse, Spring Tool Suite, whatever you like. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to be using IntelliJ for this stream, and I increased my font sizes and everything, so hopefully you can see it all right. Yeah, feel free to basically post questions in chat and any comments, any questions you have. I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat, so sometimes you're going to see me looking at the different sites, but that's all right. All right, so this is the empty Spring Boot application. So for people who know Spring Boot, they know that it's fairly opinionated about how the project layout should look like, what should be in which folder, and we're going to be using that a lot. So if I go back for a second to my first milestone, and I see that, okay, so the goal is to build an empty HTML page, right? So I use Spring Initializer, I declare dependencies. I'm not going to use Spring Boot DevTools, but again, it's just for the purpose of the stream, just to save us a bit of time. And the next one is let's create a landing page, right? So we need to create a landing page and display something when we go to application main page to /. So if you feel like you're a web designer, you're absolutely free to create something from scratch, like design the whole HTML page with CSS and JavaScript. I don't feel that brave today, so instead I'm going to be using a template which is called Start Bootstrap Shop Template, and it's fairly basic. It's pretty, I would say, fundamental e-commerce web application website layout. You see, like you have a list of categories on the left. You have some like a gallery to highlight the important stuff you want to promote, and then you see the full catalog of items basically on your landing page. So far so good. So I'm going to download it as a zip folder. I don't even need to check it out, basically as a Git repo. By the way, I highly recommend you to use Git for that. Even if you're doing like a local development, you're not gonna probably deploy it anywhere. But feel free to use Git and GitHub and actually submit your work in there. And we're gonna talk about submission in a second, actually. So yeah, let me copy the files I need. So I'm gonna need these files, right? So as I said, Spring Boot is fairly opinionated about the file structure. So what I've done, I've downloaded the template, I extracted it locally, and then I copied basically just these two folders in one file from the downloaded archive, which is CSS and vendor, and index.html is my template. Well, it's at the moment it's just a static page basically, right? So I can actually even run the application as is, and you will see the landing page. But let's make it a little bit more interesting, and let's make it a template actually. So to make it a mustache template, what I need to do is just I need to change the extension to mustache, and immediately you get this HTML file converted into a template. So I can start putting logic into that. But that's not the purpose of the first milestone, I know that. So for the first milestone, I only need to basically show the landing page as is without any fancy logic. So let's run the application, see how it goes. One of the reasons I like IntelliJ that you can do a lot of, like, you can run the application from here, you can immediately see the application output in here, you can control it fairly easily with the run parameters, so it's pretty cool. But as I said, any application would do, any IDE would do. Right, so let's go to our localhost and see. So this is actually our application, our Spring Boot application serving our index template, and this index template is using the static files provided by our template we downloaded, and we see our first milestone up and running. So if I go back to the milestone, right, I see that my deliverable, and deliverable is an important idea about every milestone. So for the milestone, you in the end of every milestone, you're gonna have a deliverable. For different live projects, this means different things. Sometimes you're just gonna have a single file, like you need to produce, if you're doing like data science or something, you're gonna produce a single file, maybe with like a Python, what are we called, notebook, right? But for this project, you actually need to submit all of the source code. And you can do that easily using this command, and it's another reason to use Git basically. So you can not just have a version control just for you. Let me initialize the Reaper first. So this is absolutely empty application, right? I don't have anything. I don't even have repository, I think. Yeah, so I have multiple files. I can add them, right? And I can make my first commit and call it first commit. Cool. So these are my files from the template I downloaded, and literally the only file I created, well, actually none of them, all of them are generated or downloaded from somewhere, but that's okay. That's just for the first milestone. So if I would be going through the course right now, I need to submit my solution now. So imagine you're working on that, right? You went through all of these steps, you read all the resources, you read about creating controllers, designing the views. Well, actually, I haven't done that. So let's maybe do that first, and then we submit our work. So imagine you're going through that, right? And to do that, to render the page, you also need to create a controller. As you can see, you don't really need to do that, right? That's a bit tricky. So we don't have any controllers, we don't have anything, and we still see the application landing page. It's not actually that weird, it just shows how cool Spring Boot is, because in fact it knows that you have index template, and when you go to the main page of in your slash page, that's probably means you want to render this in the index template. And when you render this index template, you don't need to write any code. If there is no logic, if there is nothing, there's absolutely no code you need to write. But let's write something just to basically show it even an empty page, right? So I'm going to create a new controller class, and let's say I'm going to call it catalog controller, right? controller. And if I go back to my live project, I can see now actually part of this book displayed right in my course. So I don't need to jump back and forth. I can just, go and read about it. What is a controller? What is Spring MVC? How it works? I can navigate between different chapters. I can read about the different design decisions I need to make. And as you can see, that's actually, there is this Tacker controller, and that is the best indicator that you're looking at the source code from the book, because I know that probably Craig loved Tackers. So, and this is an example of a controller in Spring in Action book, but you don't really need to copy that, right? So we don't need all of that now. So we're working on something very basics, very simple. So, but you can get some inspiration. You can actually see, okay, so he's using request mapping and get mapping. That's probably what I need to do as well. So let's do that. So let's say we want to design a controller, and request mapping basically means on which URLs and which endpoints you want to map this controller to. And if you want to learn about controllers more, you can always, get some info from the book. But for now, I'm just gonna return name of the controller. All right, so I'm gonna return index, and if I run the application now, I need to rerun it because I don't have Spring Boot DevTools enabled. If you enable Spring Boot DevTools, you don't even need to restart your application. Basically, the Spring Boot DevTools will automatically monitor for changes and it will automatically refresh it. But for simplicity, I'm just going to restart it. Cool, nothing changed. But what is important now, we have a controller. So in this controller, what is happening? Not too much, basically, right? So what I'm saying is, I have a controller, I want to map it to a root of my website, and I want to serve my index template. And that's the thing, by the way, in Spring. So when you in Spring MVC, so when you have a controller and when your controller method returns a string, this means this is basically a name of your template. And again, you can learn much more about it from Craig's book and many other books on Spring, or from the official documentation as well. So imagine now I'm done with my first milestone. So I'm going to check one more time if I'm actually on track. So, all right, I designed the view, and view in my case is my mustache view, my template. And then it's time to submit my work. So now, because I do have this Git repository created, I can actually just export it easily, right? So if I go back to my command line, cool, I'm gonna add that, I'm gonna commit that and call it add empty controller. So now I need to submit that. So what I can do, I can just call a Git Archive command. So it will take all the files from the source code repo and then extract it into a zip file and call it, let's say, milestone1.zip. So now I can just basically upload this file directly into the Submit Your Solution page, or as Submit Your Solution page suggests, you can use, let's say, GitHub or GitLab or something to actually push your code from a Git repo and then show it to your mentor, basically. I'm not going to do it now. That's not the purpose, but there are plenty of options you can submit your solution. And why is it important? Because I said before that the choices I'm making now, like the view technology, the let's say build system, I'm using Gradle, not Maven. These choices are making these choices to align my solution I'm working on now with what is called the reference implementation. So the reference implementation is basically a final version of this application already built by me. And every time when you submit your work, when you submit a certain milestone solution, you're going to get access to the reference implementation, which is kind of my view on that, how I would implement that. So you can use this as an inspiration. If you're stuck, you can basically just submit something, even if it's not working. Don't worry too much. Just submit it away, and you'll get access to the reference implementation. So you can probably get some inspiration, some ideas from there. You can try to play with it. You can maybe even use, like, let's say, use the reference implementation to continue from on a certain milestone if you need to, like a foundation to carry on iterating and working on a project. That's super flexible. That's totally fine. Like, just submit your solution, whatever the state of the solution is, and then get access to the reference implementation and keep using that. And the reference implementation is using Mustache, Gradle, Java, and I think Java 11. So basically it is making some design decisions which you don't have to follow, but if you want to stick to reference implementation and be aligned with that, that's what you should do.